Hi everyone, I'm Elisa with EECC Travels, and today we're going to talk about cruising, but different types of cruises. So we have been on a ton of ocean cruises, and this is what most people think of when they think about going on a cruise. It's, sailing out to the Caribbean or going to Alaska, or your traditional 7-day, I'm getting on a big ship and going to a few different places kind of cruise. And that is fantastic. We've done it a lot. We absolutely love it. But we've had our first experience with a river cruise. And so I wanted to make this video to explain the differences between a traditional ocean cruise, which most people understand, and what a river cruise has to offer. And from this information, you'll be able to determine, is a river cruise right for you? Is it something that you would be interested in doing? So we're gonna break this into a few different categories. First off, let's talk about the ships themselves. Ocean cruise ships are big. I mean, shoot, we're talking about, some of them are mega ships that can hold 6,000, 7,000 passengers, even down to a standard size that's gonna hold 2,000 to 3,000 passengers. And then you even have your smaller vessels that are your more luxury lines that'll hold, 500 to 1,000. Most people understand what that means. You've got multiple different venues. You're gonna have a theater. You're gonna have different dining rooms. You're gonna have multiple bars around the ship, swimming pools, lots to do, because more than likely that ship is part of your destination. You have chosen a vacation not only for the ports, but for the ship that's gonna take you to those ports, right? So how many times have we said, okay, yeah, I wanna go to the Caribbean, and I've been to the Caribbean before, and I love these ports, and I've got 3 different ships that will take me to those ports. And then you're gonna look at the different ships and what they have to offer and pick the cruise, not only for the ports that you're going to, but what those ships can do for you. How many shows do they have? How many pools do they have? How many different, venues do they have that give you things to do at night, right? And on sea days, we love our sea days, right? Lots of activities during the sea days, pool time on the sea days. So the ship itself is part of your destination. So on a river cruise, it's almost the complete opposite. We're talking much, much smaller ships. So the ships hold usually no more than 200 passengers. So that right there, you can feel a vast difference. I mean, we're talking 6,000, 7,000 passengers down to less than 200 people on this river cruise ship. And the size of the ship obviously is going to be a lot smaller too. There are height requirements for river cruises, so they have to be able to fit under the bridges. So for the most part, the river ships are not going to be any more than 4 decks. So your lower deck is going to be, it's not an interior cabin because there is a window, so we'll call it equal to an ocean view of what you're used to on an ocean ship. It's a river view. It's going to be a standard size cabin with small portholes that give you some natural light, and very, very close to the water's edge. Then on decks 2 and 3, you're gonna have your standard cabins. These are gonna be your balcony cabins and your suites. So a balcony on a river cruise ship can be different than a balcony on an ocean cruise ship. So on an ocean cruise ship, you walk outside and you have this open balcony, and you've got a couple of chairs and a table, and you can sit outside. Oftentimes on a river cruise ship, it's gonna be what's called a French balcony, or it just has an open window that's a floor to ceiling window that opens up, and you have the river right there. So very, very different than an ocean cruise and what we're used to there. You're also always going to be very close to the water because the ship's no more than 4 decks high. Then you've got your hybrid cabins or your suites that have both. It's got the French balcony that opens up and a standard balcony that you can go out to. And you're gonna choose your cabin type based on you and what you like. On the first river cruise we took, we were lucky enough to get one of the bigger cabins that had both. Unfortunately, it it was cold. We were cruising in, cold weather, so we did not spend very much time out there. So take that into consideration too when you're looking at the river cruises. Are you going in the summer where you're gonna have beautiful weather and want to spend time out on that balcony? You might want to spend a little bit more on the cabin that has those amenities. Or are you doing a winter cruise or a Christmas markets cruise, for instance, where you're not spending very much time outdoors because of the weather? Save your money and get a cabin that doesn't have that extra amenity. So that's the cabins. So let's talk about what there is available to do on a river cruise on the ship. We're not talking about porch yet, on the ship. So you're gonna have one dining room and it's going to serve breakfast, lunch, and dinner. In that dining room, there's no assigned seating, there's no real dress code. The food is very good on a river cruise, I can tell you that from our experience. So you're gonna go in, you're gonna have your traditional sit-down meal. Is there a buffet? No, there's not, but there is light snacks in the parlor. I don't really know what to call the area. It's just kind of like open seating area. They will have light snacks in there. You can usually go in for breakfast and have a small-ish buffet. It's not a buffet, but it's like, items out that you can grab and go, but not a big buffet like you're thinking about on an ocean cruise. But that is available for some meals and for late night snacks. But for your main meals, you're gonna go have a sit down meal in the dining room. And what about the entertainment? This is gonna be different too, because on the ocean ships, you've got a theater, you've got a casino, you've got different music venues and things like that. But on a river ship, you have one venue that everything happens in. It's got your bar, it's got your parlor, it's got a little gift shop, it's got your drink stations, and this is where you can come and just relax. Or most evenings there's gonna be some music. What's really cool is, because you're so close to these ports and you're not going very far, is that local musicians will come on board and perform. I loved this aspect, that you were able to get that immersed environment on the ship itself. You didn't have to go into port to have that musical experience. They brought it to you. So a couple of nights on board, we had that where local musicians came on and performed. Then there is also a musician that stays on the ship and he plays piano. He also is the DJ. So if you have a group like we did, we were a large group on this particular cruise, and we were a little bit more lively than maybe sometimes you'll have on river cruises. So he actually just turned over his DJ station to us, and we were able to choose the music we wanted and go as long as we wanted with the music, instead of it just playing for 30 minutes or an hour or whatever. So they're very flexible like that too, where on an ocean cruise ship you have very detailed, this is happening at this time, and when it's over, this is happening, or there's nothing. So I like that aspect as well, is that we could kind of make it whatever we want it type of vacation. So there was nights where we did not want to go and listen to any of the music and we just went to our rooms. And then there was nights where we stayed out pretty late because we had friends with us. The DJ turned over the music to us, late night snacks were served. And so we had a really, really good time. I will suggest, if you are doing a river cruise, if you're considering a river cruise, to bring some friends with you, at least another couple or another family with you, because I think for the onboard experience, you will have a better time if you have people to interact with. Doesn't mean you're not gonna meet friends on board. That can definitely happen too. But having a plan or bringing some friends with you can enhance the experience. Okay, let's talk about the port experience. And this is gonna be geared mainly to Americans, because as Americans, we are typically used to cruising out of US ports, and that is going to the Caribbean, to Mexico, to Alaska, or a Canada, New England sailing. And on these, you will typically have 2 to 3 sea days on a 7-day cruise and 3 to 4 ports. So depending on the itinerary, you may have more ports, less ports, but you're always going to have sea days. When you're doing a Europe cruise, and this goes for ocean cruises or river cruises. There are very little to no sea days because the cities or the ports are so close to each other. So even when you're doing an ocean cruise, say you're doing the Mediterranean and you're cruising out of Barcelona and you've got a port every single day of your 7-day cruise. That is very similar to the river because the cities are so close to each other. When you're on the river, you can go back to your ship at night, and while you're sailing at night, you're going from one city to the other. The difference here is sometimes you will have 2 ports in one single day because everything is so close to each other. When you're going down the river, you can be in Amsterdam in the morning as you get on the ship, and then you're going to go down a little bit and get off in another city and have another experience. I thought that was fantastic. It's very port intensive, so that is something to keep in mind. That port intensivity is going to go for Europe as a whole. Anytime you're going to do a Europe cruise, you're going to have a lot of port days. And like I said, little to no sea days. On a river cruise, you have 0 river days because you're just going from one port to another. Okay, now let's talk about what's included in an ocean cruise versus what's included in a river cruise. So when you go on an ocean cruise, you know that your food is included, your basic beverages are included, not alcohol, and depending on the cruise line you choose, sometimes there's extras thrown in. Sometimes you might have a shore excursion thrown in, you might have some onboard credit, things like that. With a river cruise, there's a little bit more all-inclusive feel to it. So when you get on board, of course, all your meals are always going to be included. Your basic beverages are included. So your coffee, tea, water, things like that, always included. And some alcohol is included. So if you eat in the dining room for lunch or dinner, or I guess if you want to have a mimosa with breakfast, alcohol is always included in the dining room. Also, some river cruise lines will have a happy hour. We were sailing with AMA Waterways, and they do have happy hour every day in the evenings right before dinner. So when you go to happy hour, you can order from their happy hour menu, and all the drinks in that 1 hour are included, no extra cost. Now, if you want drinks later on in the evening, after dinner, there is a cost to those, but the cost is minimal. So for instance, we just came off a typical ocean cruise, and the beer was about $10 a beer because it was, say, $8.50 a beer plus 18% gratuity. So when you round that all off, it's about $10 a beer. On a river cruise, there's no gratuity added to the beer or wine or anything, and they're at a minimal cost. So the beers on board the river cruise were $4 to $5. That's a big difference. That is a really big difference when you're, paying for drinks. So that's something to keep in mind. Also, the biggest thing is that your shore excursions are included. So on a river cruise, every port that you go to will have a shore excursion included. Now, there are some more budget-friendly river cruise lines that might take this out, but for the most part, most of the river cruises that you're gonna look at do have this because that is a big feature of the river cruises, is those curated shore excursions. So when I say curated shore excursions, I love this phrase that the river cruises use. An ocean cruise will take you to a country where a river cruise will take you through a country. I absolutely love that, and it really did feel that way because you're going on the river and the city is all around you, as opposed to pulling up to a port where you can look out and see where you're going. So I really enjoyed that aspect of it. And the excursions themselves were, usually it's one bus per excursion, and sometimes if it's a walking tour, then that bus will be split into 2 or 3 guides that take you out. I never felt like there were too many people on any of our excursions. Any of our walking tours that we did, we had a guide and maybe 15 to 20 people with that one particular guide. So I never felt that the excursions were overly crowded or I couldn't hear. What's really nice is that when you get into your cabin, you're gonna have your own, I forget what they call it, but it's basically a receiver for your tours. So you're gonna have a rechargeable receiver with an earpiece for each person in the cabin. Then when you go on the tours, you touch your receiver to the paddle and you're connecting with your tour guide. So you don't have to be standing right next to the person to hear what they're saying. You can hang back. Like me and Jason, for instance, we like to obviously take videos and pictures. So we typically hang back, let the tour guide go a little bit ahead. We can still hear what they're saying, so we know what's going on around us, but we hang back so we can have our personal experience and get the video or picture footage that we want. I enjoyed that aspect of it because I didn't feel like I was in a rush. If it started to get crackly, I knew she was getting ahead of us and I'm like, okay, we need to go so we can catch up with our guide. But we never felt rushed on these tours and I really, truly enjoyed them and I thought that was a great aspect of the river cruise. Talking about itineraries a little bit and going back to the taking you to a city versus through a city, you're gonna get a different port experience with a river cruise. So an ocean cruise can only take you to ports that a big ship can dock at that are on a sea or an ocean. From there, you can take excursions that are a little bit more inland and visit other cities. Like for instance, we did a British Isles cruise recently and we wanted to go to Dublin. So the ship obviously cannot dock in Dublin because it's inland. So we docked in Dunleary. Oh God, I hope I said that right, Dunleary. And we were able to take transportation into Dublin and spend the day there. The difference being on a river cruise is you're docking in city center. When you cruise out of Amsterdam, you literally can get off of the river cruise and walk into Amsterdam. It's right there. I mean, how much more immersed can you get into a city? That was fantastic. Also, some river cruises will have an overnight. For instance, ours, we boarded the ship in Amsterdam, we spent the night, then the next morning is when we had our excursion in Amsterdam, which was a canal tour. So in theory, if we wanted to, we could have come on board, done our check-in, and then gone off and spent the entire night in Amsterdam if we wanted to, as long as we were back on board before the ship left. So that's an interesting aspect as well. So I'm just starting to get into looking at all the different itineraries of these river cruises, and there are a lot of options out there. So the main rivers in Europe are the Rhine and the Danube, and more ships are getting into the Seine in France and the Douro in Portugal. So you're getting more and more options there in Europe. There are also river cruises here in the United States, and we will be doing one of those later this year. The main one obviously is the Mississippi, but there are offshoots to the Mississippi, and the one that's really got our attention is the Snake River. Interested in those. Probably won't do Mississippi ourselves because of where we live. All of those ports that are on the Mississippi River, living in Louisiana, we've been there, we've done that. So we don't feel like spending the money on a river cruise down the Mississippi would be best for us. But if you live in other parts of the country, sailing on the Mississippi would be pretty spectacular because where they stop, there's a lot of history, there's a lot of interesting spots along that river. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. I'm very curious. Please leave me a comment if you've ever been on a river cruise, and if you have, which river did you sail on? And do you have a preference between river cruising and ocean cruising? I can tell you that we will most definitely be doing river cruises in the future. We really enjoyed our experience. I loved the immersion. I loved the smallness of the ship. It was never crowded. We got to know people. You learn your way around the ship like that. You're not getting lost. So there's a lot of good aspects to a river cruise, and it's something that we definitely want to do in the future. So definitely leave us a comment. Let us know what you think, and happy cruising. We'll see you next time. Bye.